So yeah, it'd be good to see how it goes.
Yeah, I think there are so many different approaches to having a balanced life. And that's what this is all about. It's trying to bring, we spoke about intuition a couple of times. Now we're talking about the three brains, like the gut and the head and the heart. Um, People are working on different spheres and different dimensions, different levels of, of well-being. And so what I try to do with Be Well is try to contact people who are doing this kind of stuff and then bring them onto this space.
Yeah, yeah,
And then we're inspired or we're actually pushed to go and learn a little bit more. That's what it's all about.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
because
Even
obviously after,
those of us that are a little off balance.
yeah, but after 1 hour with you, I'm sure we're not going to be enlightened, Andrea, right? But hopefully you're going to show us a little bit of light in the direction that we should go and maybe invest some time and study and
Yeah.
that
There's just sort of maybe a little bit more thinking about how this all works together. Yeah, maybe how this integration works between us as we're sort of starting to, bring these different aspects of our personality and our psyche together. It'd be, yeah, it's a good thing to go.
yeah. That's what it's all about. It's like, just trying to help each other and to inspire each other as well to do more.
Yeah,
That was the whole point. Okay.
that's great, Alex.
So let me say this is the Be Well Hub Series. It's an online meeting space dedicated to uncovering insights, tackling difficulties, and celebrating successes from our life journeys. Okay, I think we are all on this journey of self-improvement, of awareness, consciousness, and so on. That's what the Be Well is about. My name is Gary Marcus Judge, and our weekly get-togethers are designed to support, share, and to inspire each other to actually go a little bit deeper into these topics. Okay, so today our guest speaker is Andre Duquemin. Andre is a business coach and trains business owners to use all three of their brains. Okay, today's topic is unlocking the power of your three brains: science, balance, and success. So welcome, Andrea. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here with us,
Thank you,
bringing
Gary.
your insights and your knowledge and
Yeah,
inspiring us, hopefully, to go a little bit deeper into this path.
yeah,
Perhaps you can just tell us a little bit about what are we talking about, the three brains, and
yeah.
how did you come onto this path, and what can it do for us if we go a little bit deeper and just give us
Yeah.
some background on this.
Sure. So I actually, when I first started out, so my journey, I should probably give you a very brief background of where I'm from. So 20 years ago, I qualified, well, 22, 23 years ago, I qualified as an osteopath. So a physical therapist type, chiropractor, osteopath type thing, depending on where you are in the world. And straight away, I started working in a relatively busy sort of town with lots of people who were working in office environments and feeling stress and all that sort of stuff. And so I got really interested in the mind and body connection. So why do people, when they're under stressful conditions, get feeling overwhelmed, feeling panic, getting anxiety attacks, all this sort of stuff, and then how is it manifesting in their physical symptoms? So I started to get more and more interested in that. And then over the last 20 years, I've really sort of gone deeper into that through various channels, including craniosacral therapy training, trauma training, peak performance, a lot of neuroscience, acceptance and commitment therapy, and really bringing all these different aspects into how I work with my own process, but also how I work with my clients. And really, this sort of three brain training evolved over the last 4 or 5 years. But I started out talking about it as the gut, the heart, and the head. And actually, then I realized that probably wasn't the best way to talk about it as far as I was concerned, because people were talking about, the gut brain and then the heart brain connection. And it started to become a bit more about, people were talking sort of maybe in terms of nutrition and all this sort of stuff, and trying to link the gut and the heart and all these bits and pieces. And actually how I ended up talking about the three brains is the survival brain, the feeling brain, and the thinking brain. And
There's a survival brain, the thinking brain.
the survival brain, the feeling brain, and the thinking
Oh,
brain.
okay.
So they can loosely connect into gut, heart, and head. But I think when you talk about them as when we give them a different name, the gut, the heart, and the head tended to take people in particular areas. And this opens up the conversation in a bit of a deeper way. So,
does the survival go with the heart, with the head, with the gut? Is that connected to, or is it just all three areas?
Yeah, I mean, so that's I think that's really what I wanted to sort of pick out, was the fact that these are three systems. So rather than thinking them as of three brains, they're not three parts of your brain, which some people have talked about previously. They're three systems that are interconnected. So your survival brain is that primal part of you, that part of you that's always on the lookout for threat. It's really that very sort of bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's the survival, it's the getting food, shelter, looking for threat, both at a level of physical threat, but also a level of threat to our ego. Our survival brain is often triggered by other people's judgments on us, or by other people's opinions of us. So there's that sort of society level survival brain, but then there's also obviously the physical level. And that's really communicated to us via physical sensation. So that's where that link with the gut is. It's a lot about butterflies in our tummy, or our heart racing, or breathing increasing, maybe a bit of restlessness as the stress response is shunting blood into your arms and legs, preparing you to run, preparing you to fight for life, or to evade threat. So it's a really sort of primal response. And then from that level, that survival, primal, very physical sensation base, we move up into the feeling brain, which could be related to the heart, as we said before. And so that's really and related in the body, maybe to the heart and to the amygdala as well in our brain. And that's really sort of taking this experience of what's happening to me and translating it into some emotional processing. So what's going on at an emotional level for me when I'm experiencing this thing that's going on around me? So taking these physical sensations and saying, oh, I'm feeling, this feeling that I have is related to anxiety, or is related to fear, or is related to love, or connection. And then from that level, the feeling brain, the sort of the thinking brain gets involved, and the thinking brain is now saying, okay, so now I've got this situation, and I know how I feel about it. What's the action that I can take? What are the thoughts I'm having, and what action can I take to move me either towards my goals, hopefully towards my goals, or if I take action that maybe isn't so powerful, it's going to move me away from my goals. And really, when we start to work with all three of these centers, so the survival brain, the feeling brain, and the thinking brain, and then they start interacting with each other. So we've got this one way sort of what we call sort of bottom up processing, which is the survival brain feels into the feeling brain, and the feeling brain to the thinking brain. But then there's this bottom down thing, this top down processing, as well as the thinking brain gives us some idea about what we should be doing in terms of action, and that maybe changes how we feel about things, and that maybe reduces our stress response, and so that survival brain sort of settles down again. So it's really about having these three centers sort of working in tandem with each other, and when you can really get that sort of harmonious balance between the three, both up and down, then you're really starting to live a much more balanced life.
So when clients come to you, coachees or clients,
Yeah.
what's are they sort of having just problems with one of these systems, or all three of the systems, or?
Great question. Yeah, I mean sometimes there's almost always one area that we'll look at more. We'll make a priority. So we almost do an audit. I talk about this as a three brain audit. We'll take clients in, and we'll really look at how they're doing in their life in terms of, what is the stressor that they come to see me for. Generally who I work with, I sort of talk about it as therapeutic coaching. So I bring a bit of therapy and a bit of coaching into the process work that I do, and the training that we do, and we're really starting to help people to rewire their neural pathways, to rewire their neurology by looking at how they think and feel and act. And if we can start to sort of go into seeing maybe where they're out of balance in one of these areas, then we can start to point them in directions for where they could change, how they deal with a particular emotion, for example. So you might find that someone is in a situation where they're very much frightened of a particular emotion. They're bottling up one emotion, they don't want to deal with it. And actually, if they can start to learn to work with that emotion and process it in a healthy way, then they start to feel better about themselves. They start to rise through a particular challenge. Or some people might come in with incredible anxiety. Some people come in really who are so overwhelmed, and that anxiety is so and that sort of that physical manifestation of anxiety, the heart rate, the breathing rate increasing, their nervous energy, they're just this bundle of nerves, as we say, and really grounding exercises, breathing exercises, stuff to bring them down, to center themselves, to ground themselves, is going to be key to their progress. So yeah, people come in with different areas of their lives with different sort of, I would say one area would tend to focus on first, but then all three areas are affected at the same time as well.
Okay. Matthew, you got a question?
Hey, Matthew, hi.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned coaching and therapy. It's come up quite a lot with the EMCC about how you can figure out, okay, I'm coaching somebody, I'm a business and sales coach, and I don't really want to get into the neuroscience-y and boohoo stuff.
Yeah.
But when you talk about therapy and coaching, is it mostly therapy, or is it coaching helping you with to deliver the therapy?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think for me, so my background is obviously was originally in physical therapy, and then did training in some trauma therapy as well. But then most of the time now that I use acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, which is a very powerful sort of tool, which I think combines the best of therapy and coaching. So it's really looking forward. It's looking at how can our behaviors, how can the thoughts and feelings we have and our behaviors that lead on from those things, how can we start to work at that level with those bits and pieces, rather than going back and talking about someone's childhood and just doing that psychotherapy approach. That's not really what I'm doing. I'm trying to help people, guide people forward in the moment to move into powerful values, to move into where what we talk about as towards move. So what are powerful actions that they can take that will move them towards their goals rather than away from them. So in the same way, if you're working with someone around sales who's particularly worried about sales calls, how can you work with that client at that level to recognize their anxiety, maybe because they're when they're getting to I'm making this up now, but when they're getting to the point where they're about to deliver a price to a client, maybe they're starting to feel that anxiety and feel panic and think and have this sort of idea of maybe they're a bit of imposter syndrome or something, and they're starting to feel this anxiety and they're starting to panic, and so their sales pitch doesn't work as well as it could do. And if they could start to use tools to settle that system down, then they can start to move through that system. So it's a very practical way of working. It's not going back into someone's childhood and going deep into that necessarily, but it's about practically how do these thoughts, these feelings, these physical sensations interact and stop me from moving forward in my life, and then how can we change that?
It's definitely a sensitive topic because you get really close and in depth with somebody when you're coaching them, even at a business level, and things just sometimes pop out, and you're like, "Oh Jesus, where'd that come from?"
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, I think going back to my first coach training was in 2007, 2008, something like that. And going back to there, it was very much drilled into us that if we weren't comfortable, if we didn't have a therapeutic background in a coaching environment, know how to refer on to other clients. And I think that's probably critical for all coaches, and myself, knowing I've got a decent level of therapeutic background, but if I have a very strict way of knowing whether my clients are served by me or whether I need to refer them on to someone. And every now and again, I'll have to refer a client on to somebody else. It doesn't happen very often, but it's just recognizing where your expertise is. And
I think it's tricky for coaches because if you're not a therapist, how can you know if somebody needs therapy or they're just pissed off and they want to vent something, and then once that's done, it's over and you get on back into the grow or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's kind of tricky, and I'd say a lot of people maybe leave it too long, because like if the boohoos, as I say, come along and then they're gone, they come back and then they're gone, they come back and then they're gone. So you need to keep the client because they're paying you money and you're making your income from that. So if you start just, oh, jizz, they're unhappy, I'll send them to a therapist.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You have to be careful. Like.
Oh no, definitely. No, I mean, absolutely. And there's obviously exactly as you say, someone might bring an emotional subject for coaching session, absolutely, and that's fine. And of course, you can hold space for that. That's excuse me, that's perfectly acceptable. Of course, I think for most people, they can tell where the boundary is. If a client really does start to talk about things that are very much outside of your own sort of area of expertise, then you can work out how to refer those people on, I think, if necessary. But
that was a question I had for you, Andre. Was it like your approach is a conversational approach to like coaching, or is it like situational observation? What is the approach to your client?
Yeah, so really, so pretty much all of our work is, well, there's obviously a conversational approach to it, but there'll always be behavioral techniques that we'll be talking about at some level within our sessions. So for me, a lot of what I talk about is mental fitness and peak performance as well. But the mental fitness side of this is recognizing that actually, if I look at a gym, if I want to get physically fit and I go and stand outside a gym and look at all this great equipment, and I go, oh, look, all of this equipment, there's the bicep machine, there's the running machine, there's the abs workout area, I can go and do an abs work, and you look at it and then you walk away and go back home, you don't get physically fit. And the same way with this, with building up resilience, mental fitness, all those sort of things, but bringing balance to the three brains is all about changing behaviors. It's all about recognizing that actually I can start to control my neurology. I can start to control how I think and feel and sense, have that physical sensation. I can control those by bringing my awareness into these centers. So we talk about, these three brains, as I say. I can bring my awareness into my physical sensations to work with the survival brain. I can bring my awareness into my emotional world to work with my feeling brain, and I can bring awareness into my thinking to work with my thinking brain. And when I can bring awareness into those areas, what I want to do is to be able to take some action to work with them. So for example, if I am having this repetitive thought about, my boss not liking me or my employees not liking me, whatever it is, if I don't challenge that thought, if I don't have some way of dealing with that thought, then it's just going to get the same result all the time. So having some sort of mindful process where you can start to recognize that thought's coming in and saying, actually, I don't want to engage in that thought, or whatever that process might be, that behavioral change in itself will start to change that neuroplasticity of the brain. As I start to challenge one thought, I'm challenging a pathway, and I'm starting to, as I start to stop that one thought from having so much power, I start to have another thought that starts to create a new neural pathway, a new neural network. And that starts to build new pathways, which makes me think and feel and act in different ways.
Got a question
That answer
here.
your question?
Yeah, it was, yeah, I think so. How willing are your clients to actually put in the hard work, the hard yards, as you were talking about the mental fitness, the hard yards in the gym. So they've come to you with a problem, or they've come with a trauma or whatever, and then you've said, okay, this is what we need to do. How willing are they to?
Yeah, most of the time they're willing, because most of the time they're coming to a point where they're recognizing that they, without moving forward, pretty obvious, without moving forward, they'll get stuck. And so most clients are coming to a point where if they're going to engage in this work, almost always my clients that start to work with me are almost already, I wouldn't say they're pre-sold into it, but they're already fully aware that there's an issue, that they believe at some level the work that we do of behavioral change and working at that science, neuroscience level, they believe that is the way forward, and so they are willing to start the work. And it's 5 to 10 minutes a day. That's what I say. That's part of the the sales process within this. This isn't about doing 2 hours of meditation every day and sitting cross-legged on your mat. This is it's about starting to maybe do a minute's grounding exercise, maybe doing 30 seconds of breathing exercise, maybe doing mindfulness for a couple of minutes or 5 minutes, whatever it is. But it's not a huge amount of time out of your day to start making quite significant changes. So most people are ready to do that. And the people that aren't, fine. They're the guys or girls that turn up and look at the gym and don't want to do it. That's fine. but in my experience, I would say 90% of clients are very, very willing, and maybe even more than that. Actually, thinking about my roster of clients at the moment, they're all doing the work. They're all doing. I mean, they're not all. You know, some of them are going to be doing it a lot more. Some of them are much more engaged in it and really doing it every day. And they'll be reporting. You know, we talk about getting them to do their daily reps. You know, they'll be coming back and saying, "Yeah, I'm doing my daily reps every day." And others will be using it when, you know, when they're feeling under pressure or when they're feeling a little bit stressed. They'll maybe use those tools. But yeah, so it's a variety, but there's no one really comes into this. If I'm doing my job right, I don't think anyone comes into working with me as a coach who is just going to sort of do the session and then not do anything in between sessions. I think we're talking a lot in the conversations I have in some of the marketing we talk about. You know, we're talking about retraining neural pathways and this sort of thing. So I think people are engaged, you know, to actually get the work done. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the first step is they understand that they've got to go to a specialist. They need help.
Yeah.
And I think the pain's, you know, just becoming unbearable, and so they come to you. Once they take the first step, then as a consequence, they need to put in the hard work. Yeah.
And we're not.
Matthew's got his hand up again. Andre.
I
Matthew?
think mine is an expansion on what you just asked, Gary. What are the red flags that you might see when you're talking to a client that knows they need help? Because I know a shed load of people that need help, but they're not willing to engage because they just don't want to deal with the pain. So
Yeah, so I guess, so first of all, I should probably say that where most of my clients are, they are mostly business owners or executives who are feeling burnt out, overwhelmed, stressed out, recognizing that they're the bottleneck in their business or their career. So they're not coming to me. This isn't a therapy business. So they're not coming to me with suicidal thoughts or relationship breakdowns. That's their primary thing. They're primarily coming to me with something to do in their professional life is not working. The business isn't making money. They're struggling in their career. They're, you know, C-suite, but there's been a few things happen to them at their personal level that's really causing it very difficult. So primarily that's my audience. So most of them aren't coming with very, very complex needs in that sense. So straight away they're coming in with an issue, but they're already high achieving, you know, resilient, well, relatively resilient. You know, they've overcome lots of challenges to get where they are. So they've already got that skill set. And so selling it to them is quite easy right at the beginning. It is, guys, if you don't do the work, you know, this is the thing. This is a gym, right? If you're coming into this 3 Brain training gym, then I'm expecting you to do some work here. I'm going to ask you to do bits and pieces in our sessions, and then take these home. And as I said, 90% plus of them are very, very happy to do that. If someone really is disengaged, and I have had a couple of people who have been disengaged in the process. I can think of 1 or 2 in the last 3 or 4 years who haven't been engaged in the process and who wanted to resist at every level, question. I just said, hey, I don't think we're a fit to work together. You know, and it's pretty obvious in the first session or two, and hopefully I get it in the first sort of, you know, that first discovery call, as everyone's talked about it as, you know, that first initial hour-long chat. I'd probably catch it there, but I can think of 1, maybe 2 people who I didn't, and maybe by the second or third session, it was becoming pretty obvious that they weren't really wanting to do any work. They just wanted to, they wanted to question and not really to commit to doing anything, which is fine. And you can point them down the direction, but if there's no real shift, then yeah, you have to sort of move forward from there and maybe.
I think I like the expression. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we've been there. Looking at all of us, we're all coaches and entrepreneurs or ex-entrepreneurs and authors and so on here. What kind of problems could we have that could be resolved by your 3-brain approach?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much anything. I mean, I think about my roster at the moment, you know, clients that I'm working with at the moment. You know, I've worked with sort of 3 or 4 even just in this week, and one of them has moved to a senior leader. He's moving should be relatively careful with with what I'm saying, but I'm sure he won't be listening. But yeah, he's moved away from his home where he's been working for a long time. His kids are a little bit older. He's moving away to another part of the world, and then there's been some family issues as well. So he's got a big move, making very big career move for him, you know, a real big promotion. But in the background, there's some of these family issues that are going on. So we're dealing with that sort of sudden change in his own situation, and then all this change of family dynamics. Other people are, you know, just have got to a point where they are really burnt out. So, you know, one of the things I say about as we all get older, we try to, you know, as the demands get more and more and more, we try to increase capacity to fill that demand, which is normally by working longer and longer hours, which invariably leads to burnout, you know, to people feeling exhausted, tired, you know, overwhelmed. And so we work with a lot of people like that who are just, you know, they're trying to just do more and more and more, and we're trying to get them to work a bit smarter rather than harder, just work smarter, working with these processes through to, you know, so people, and then people who are really, so I worked with someone recently who's a trader who does day trading, and he was really struggling with some of the emotional issues that were coming up in his day-to-day trading and in his money from the money side. So we were doing a lot of work around money, his approach to money, his background, you know, how his emotional processing, how he dealt with the anxiety, how he dealt with the day-to-day minutiae of the trading desk, you know, his own trading desk. So yeah, so I mean, pretty much anyone, this three-brain approach really works with anyone, with any situation really, where you're feeling slightly out of control or slightly under pressure, or, you know, it's probably looking at that under pressure, out of control, not feeling at your greatest. That's where the three-brain training approach comes in, rather than looking for career coaching or, you know, necessarily.
No, because I think before I heard you say as well that, you know, clients come to you, and I've had them as well, have come to me and they want to increase their revenue, their turnover, or they want to open a branch overseas, and they want to do things that are way beyond what their problems are. Let's say their problems are communication, leadership, self-management, that kind of stuff, but they want to do other things. So before you go and open a branch overseas or try to increase your turnover, whatever, let's start looking at the issues that you have here with the stuff that you have here. So sometimes that auditing that you mentioned before was very important, because you have an idea, a clear idea of what is the issue, and it's not something that's just being like, you know, put to one side and they want something else. So anyway, that was just
so the assessment is key, right? So that assessment piece is the first piece that we go into, and that's really key. If you're not assessing where somebody is, I'm sure most coaches have some sort of assessment process, but if you're not assessing it, it almost needs to be an assessment followed by a diagnosis, followed by a, this is what we're going to do to move you forward, you know. Or else it just becomes a bit too vague, doesn't it?
Let's listen to someone else. I don't know. Martin. Hi, Martin. Lily. Hi, Rob, David, Matthew. Any thoughts, any problems, any issues that you guys have that maybe Andrea could maybe look at through his three-brain approach? Martin?
Hi, Andre.
Hi, Martin.
It's first time on here. I'm just having a listen. Thanks, Gary, for inviting me. A lot of us, you know, we're probably of an age, shall we say. We've been through a lot, and it's a matter of sort of kind of bringing things into perspective as you get older. I have no intention of stopping work, but I don't intend to, you know, sort of, as it were, just stop in terms of retirement and that sort of things. So the sort of things that when I've come across, you know, what sort of top tips could you give, as it were, to start off a self-help process? Maybe that, you know, that would be the first step for myself. You know, what can I do to help myself? And then does that open up a window to actually admitting that you know, need help, or you need help is the wrong word, need support, or you want to engage other people as part and parcel of your future. So top tips for self-help to start.
No, great question. So I think about two aspects for this always. This is about inner and outer work, right? So from the inner work, which is a bit more subtle. So it's looking at, you know, where am I getting stuck? Where am I what thoughts and feelings am I not processing through? that maybe is a little bit more on the sort of coaching perspective. So maybe having help around that aspect. But from the outer world, so I guess this is the being versus the doing. So the being is really, how am I feeling? How am I thinking? What's my inner processes that are going on? How am I dealing with stress? But from the outer perspective, there's loads of stuff we can do, from a very, very practical level. Firstly, I would say one of the most powerful things is this idea of being fully engaged and fully disengaged. So we want to be fully engaged in our work. And this is a classic sort of, particularly post-COVID, this has been a classic issue for so many clients and so many people. We want to be fully engaged in our work, fully focused, really engaged and all that sort of stuff for however long we're going to work. So let's say it's 8 in the morning till 6 at night. And then we want to have a fully disengaged phase. So we really want to find time where we stop working, where our phones are away, where emails are not being checked, where we are down tools and we are connecting with loved ones, we're having quiet time to read or to listen to music, or to I don't know, have a shower or whatever you're doing, whatever you want to do, preparing for rest. And so you get this lovely sort of fully engaged and fully disengaged cycle of your day-to-day existence. And then that expands out so that you have this sort of flow of fully engaged and fully disengaged on a day-to-day basis. And then over maybe a couple of months, you'll have a point where you'll say, actually, I'm having a week away where I'm going to be fully disengaged again. I'm going to not check emails, or I'm going to check emails relatively less often. I'm going to be disengaged from my work. I'm just going to let my creativity and my brain my body rest, and my brain just allowed to do whatever it wants to do. So those cycles are really, really important. I would also really highly recommend looking at flow states. So again, I talk about different states of our nervous system, and we can be in sort of chaos, we can be starting to move into control, or we can be moving into coherent phases. And coherent phases, particularly with the thinking brain, is around flow states, where we can really start to spend 60 minutes recognizing that we need to have 60 minutes uninterrupted power hours, where we have no one interrupting us, notifications are off, we know what we're going to be doing in that power hour. So from 9 till 10 on every morning, let's say you put that power hour aside the night before, you know what you're going to do in that power hour, you sit down, you get on with that 1 hour project, no interruptions, no notifications, nothing. And what you'll find is, as you do that, you'll spend 5-10 minutes in a struggle phase, which is that sort of initial phase where you're starting to go, oh, I'm not sure about this, I'm not trying to get my head around this. Maybe I'm writing a presentation or sending an email to a complex email to a client. After 10 minutes, you'll start to move into this phase where dopamine is released. So initially the phase is adrenaline, norepinephrine is released. Now dopamine gets released, which drives our focus into this hour-long process that we're doing. And all of a sudden, we're starting to have this sense of timelessness, this sense of everything feeling at ease, of feeling that you're in this really productive, almost hyper-focused state. And that will last for maybe 30 to 35, 40 minutes. And then coming out of that, you'll start to sort of come out, you've done some really, really powerful work in that hour-long period, and then you need to recover. So then it's taking 10 minutes or half an hour to go and have a cup of tea, or have a chat with someone, or go for a walk, spend some time in nature or whatever. But so that ability to engage and disengage, and then also that ability to use flow states, so to use the idea that we can that we can sort of multitask, and that we can concentrate on several things together, and we can get interrupted by Jeff and by Sally and and still be hyper productive, is just a fallacy that we know from all the science that's not how it works. So those are the two, from that external perspective. From that outer perspective, I would say, if you could focus on those two things, Martin, you'll be really moving forward in a really powerful way.
So yeah, it's insightful, and sort of something that many of us have tried to practice. It's hard work.
Yes, it is.
Especially when you've moved out in an environment where your time is not your own, whereas now time is your own, or can be. You can develop your own timetabling, and that's kind of the thing that. But no, that was very interesting.
Yeah, and I'm just pointing.
I got a question for you. I got a question for you, Andre.
Yeah, sure.
When your clients come to you, how aware? How learned are they about all these techniques? I mean, do you have to explain to them the benefits? You have to, how much
Yeah,
time?
so
I mean, do they come to you already? You know, they've already been through another path, another journey, and
so
then
we have an online training to our program as well. So it's an 8-week program where there is short weekly modules that teaches them all the basics of the science and the tools and techniques that they're going to use. So there's about anything between 20 and 35 minutes of training a week for them to read on to go through videos on their own and then to implement themselves. So we don't there's no point in me spending half an hour each week to going through the science, going through the tools and the techniques in detail. We expect them to do that on their online part of the program.
yeah,
There's
because
online tools and that sort of
there's
thing.
quite a lot of stuff there to you know, to expect your client to understand straight away, and
Yeah,
actually,
I mean, we talk about it on a very basic. There's a basic level. There's 3 protocols basically. So survival brain protocol, feeding brain protocol, and a thinking brain protocol. So there's 3. That it is a relatively simple sort of process to work through over those 8 weeks. I don't think people feel particularly overwhelmed by that. And some people love the science, and some people aren't really bothered. They just want to be told what to do. And so you have to gauge that
yeah.
so even within our training, we have definite modules you have to do, and then we have sort of 2 or 3 extra modules in each week that is up to you. If you want to learn more about it, you can, almost sort of bonus training. So we have a core curriculum base, which is probably, as I said, 20 minutes, half an hour of training, and then if they want to learn more, they can learn more about the science in extra videos and stuff. But no, I think people. So my clients are unique in the fact, as everyone's clients are. My clients are unique in the fact that they already know that they are interested in the science of this. They already know that they want to make changes. They're already interested. The fact that we talk about free brain training up front, they already know that there's something about this that rings true with them. So they're not coming to me as another coach versus, I don't know, anyone else doing business coaching. They're coming to me because I'm doing free brain training. Some of them come to me because they want to work with me personally, I guess. But a lot of the time they're coming to me because there's this free brain training approach, something
Sorry,
that's
you're going to
taken
say
their
something
interest.
useful?
Yeah.
Let's Lily, you got any thoughts on this 3 brain? Do you have an approach like this with your expat coaching?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar, finding that space between the what did you say, disengagement and engagement. But my question is, I feel like most people start at like the thinking, because we're all getting in our head. Just wondering
Definitely.
if, like, I mean, I'm sure we get all variants as well. I guess a question would be, how do you, because I also find that people get overwhelmed by thinking, oh, you need to meditate, you need to breathe, you need to do this, you need to,
Yeah.
you offer, it sounds like, many different things that they can approach.
Yeah.
I imagine people can like find what appeals to them, but is there anything you do to help them, like when they're like, oh, there's too much at that point, like which one, I don't know which one I connect with? Do you help them pick one that helps them ground better, or how do you
Yeah.
do?
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what we do. That's why we have these 3 different ways of working. So they know that if they're feeling this sort of sense of restlessness, that anxiety, they're feeling the heart rate go up, they're feeling the breathing rate go up, and they're feeling this sense, they need to ground. They know that if there's something in the background, that there's some sort of emotional they're not always cognizant, aware of this. You know, they're not always. I'm not saying that it's that simple, but yeah, if there's an emotional thing that comes up in a session that we'll talk about, then they'll know there's some sort of emotional work to do. And certainly from that point of view of the overthinking, that's probably the easiest thing for people to get a grasp of, I think. So I think when they recognize, when you start to work with people to tell them, to show them what are the thoughts and that they're getting stuck on, what the thoughts that are hooking into them, then they start to become much more mindfully aware of those thoughts. And when they're starting to do that, they're starting to go, oh yeah, I'm recognizing I'm having that thought now. That's a familiar thought. We've talked about it in my last session, or it's come up again previously. So I need to start to do some work around that. And I really like what you said at the beginning, Lily, there, that the most of us are stuck in our heads a lot of the time. Almost all my coaches, or all my clients rather, are paid for their cognitive abilities, right? That either they're leaders in executive roles, or they're business owners running their own, or they're founders, whatever. So their thinking brains are often they're super smart, they're super cognitive, brilliant. They're often brilliant people, but that cognitive overload can sometimes get in the way, right? Because suddenly they're overthinking, they're getting stuck in their thought processes there, and when they're doing that, they're moving into this sort of potentially starting to overthink everything, potentially starting to catastrophize, potentially starting to ruminate on stuff, waking up at 2 a.m, thinking. And actually, if they realize that part of the process is they can start feeling a bit more grounded, a bit more settled, finding a way to bring a sort of somatic intelligence into here, so they can feel their grounding, and they're a bit more present. These 3 steps I talk about with the 3 brains are get grounded, open up, and do what matters. And that key piece is getting grounded, to feel present, to feel okay, even in the midst of me feeling anxious and feeling overwhelmed, I know that I'm okay. And then once I know that I'm okay, then and I feel grounded, I can open up to what's going on for me at an emotional level. And once I can check into those emotions, then I can start to take action with my thoughts to move me towards my goals, right? Whereas if that's the opposite way around, if I don't feel grounded at all, then I've got no idea of what's going on emotionally. I'm trying to block some emotions and feel overwhelmed by other emotions, brooding on some emotions, really not being able to move through them. And then I'm taking just crazy decisions that are moving me away from my goals, right? So all of a sudden I've left my job, or I've left my relationship, or and I'm there going, wow, how did that happen? Well, because we didn't put these 3 cornerstones into place, right?
I think what you said before as well, ACT is very important in this, like, the the ACT therapy.
The model, yeah, completely.
Rob, have you got any thoughts on this, Rob McGraw, on the 3 brains? Do you use it? Last week we even spoke about intuition, like, we talk about intuition, gut feeling, all that kind of stuff. It's just a gut feeling, so you just go with it.
So I've got
but here we're talking about
a
science. We're talking about a science, gut feeling, gut, follow your heart.
I've got a little I've got a little thing on that, actually. So I talk about, again, for me, the gut instinct is generally related to safety. So when my gut's giving me a feeling, it's is there a threat to my sense of survival or my sense of ego? So that's my gut instinct, whereas my heart instinct might be, is this good for me at an emotional level? So there's a little bit of a nuance there for me.
Okay.
Maybe it's overdoing it a little bit, but
no, because last week and the week before we spoke about intuition. And so this is like, what intuition is. It a gut feeling? Is it a survival mechanism, or whatever? That was the things that we spoke about. Rob asked you, do you have any insights, any thoughts on this approach?
I think that my take on intuition is it is maybe the in a healthy person, the fine tuning of your subconscious. So it is the inlet to the interface with your gut and your heart, in this context, right where intuition sits. So it's not always drawn up into your consciousness, but if you're a healthy person, that's generally worth trusting. When we don't, is often when we end up disappointed or exploited, or something goes wrong that we end up reflecting on and saying, boy, I should have, right? I knew it all along. I just didn't honor that part of myself.
I love that.
Yeah.
Very much. Intuition is a subconscious state. It's the ability to bring our awareness into what's going on in the survival brain, or this feeling brain, from my perspective. And the same thing, the subconscious, our subconscious is this below the head, what's going on in our bodies, in our abdomen, in our viscera, what's this feedback. And if we can start to tap into that, then we can start to become more aware of our intuitive responses.
David has just written a book on servant leadership. Servant leadership with the 3 pillars. David, did you look into that as well when you were writing this book about the gut, the heart, and the
Yes, very, very much so. There was a point Just so you know, I've done engineering management basically my whole life, and I had one a position where I was fortunate enough to get involved in a couple of key business objectives for the corporate, one U.S., one global, very successfully ended. But I got to a point where maybe I shouldn't say it like this, but I just didn't give a damn anymore. And experienced the burnout that you mentioned and quit. And so there's a time span where I didn't have a job there. I was kind of half-heartedly looking for another engineering management job, but I was telling myself the whole time, I don't want to do this anymore. And, then I saw an article from Harvard Business Review talking about servant leadership. I thought, well, that's what I've been doing. Building up people, inspiring people, getting employees to feel good about themselves, different things like that, and getting more better at what they were doing. And so that's when I decided to start my own consulting business based around servant leadership. And the second issue or comment, I should say, raise your hand if you've seen the movie Mars Attacks. So when I read your three brains, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to look like a Martian. And when they play in the movie, when they play some old country music, they've tried killing these aliens, they couldn't kill them. But then this one older lady was playing these old country music, and it made their heads blow up. So if you haven't seen Mars Attacks, look at it. It's pretty funny. But that's what I thought of when I first saw what you had in there. But that also meant with my style of really odd humor, I thought, oh, this sounds interesting. And it has been. It's been very great. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
1 minute. Lily, you've put something in the chat, right? Let me just look at that question.
I was just curious because I don't want to assume. I can imagine what Rob meant. If I didn't mean to change the subject at all by healthy person. Do you have a definition of what you meant by that?
Yeah, I was just answering your question in the chat as well. Some unhealthy people who've not been, call it, adequately shrunk, right? Who have not done the healing work. They don't understand the scripts they're in. They don't understand where the messages in their head come from. So they say, well, it's intuition. No, that's really not intuition. That's your father's fear narrative, right? No, that's not well-tuned, healthy intuition. That's your mother's passive aggression, right? So if they're not healthy enough, right? And it's a question of extent, not absolute measure. Then their intuition could steer them wrong. It could be faulty in both directions, right? Yeah. It could be a bad instrument. Yeah.
So I got a question to Andre. We're talking about the three brains. Andre, you still there? Andre?
Yeah.
I thought. Sorry, you look frozen there. It's
all the Mars Attacks almost.
The Mars Attack. No. So what happens when a client comes to you and one of the three brains is over sort of whelming the other two, let's say? How do you balance that out? Do you actually put one on hold and work on the other two? How do you bring that into sync?
Yeah, so probably going back to that idea where there is a high performing executive or business owner who is super high functioning, well, to a point from that cognitive ability, but who is really getting stuck in this over processing, overthinking. Then maybe they're going through a crisis in a particular work perspective, And so they're really getting stuck in this ruminating, catastrophizing, overthinking situation. And so we come back to that sort of that initial audit, which is, where what's going on with this client at each level. And obviously each level is affected. Like if I'm overthinking, catastrophizing and ruminating, then I'm also going to be all over the place with my emotions, and I'm going to be all over the place with my stress response, my physical stress, my fight flight system is going to be all over the place. Every time I'm doing a what if this happens or a what if that happens, that's triggering more stress response. So, but it could well be that actually the initial entry point is starting to work at that cognitive level, at that thinking level. So what are the thoughts that are repetitive? What are the thoughts that are keeping them awake at night? Are these thoughts true? Are these what's going on with these thoughts? When you get hooked on these thoughts, how do you feel? How do you act? And then when you start to be able to do that, you better start to give them just some simple tools to work with their thought processes. So a very simple tool will be something called thanking your mind, which is a classic ACT technique, which is saying, thanks mind, that's, I know you're trying to help me, I know you're trying to be helpful, but actually that thought's not particularly useful at the moment to me. Thanks for looking out for me, but I'm just going to follow where I want to be going with. I'm just going to let that thought go. So it's a sort of a very simple mindfulness exercise. Rather than engage in that thought, question it, say appreciate it, but actually I'm not gonna let it sort of let it come. It's not going to be useful for me today, so I'm just going to let it go. So that would be one approach.
I'm just reflecting on this business coaching that you do, but it's also the kind of coaching that I do as well. And I have people coming to me with different sort of approaches to business. It's like a big word, business. Here you are dealing with people with these overwhelming thoughts and so on. I'm dealing with people who come to me and they're having problems with their communication, their leadership, and their discipline and their habits. Their good habits and their integrity as well, and maintaining their work, their promises to people, punctuality, all those little things that seemed like it's just taken for granted. Of course, you're the leader, you should be on time. Of course, you're the leader, you should be communicating right. You should be thinking the well-being of the team rather than yourself. But so it's a different, again, I mean, business coaching is taking a lot. I think like where you are, what you're doing is a different thing that I do with my clients as well, which is
and that's difficult, isn't it, Gary? Because that's how do you direct the right clients in the right areas, and how do they find the business coach that they need? I mean, I talk about myself more as a performance coach than a business coach, but I work with business owners a lot, and leaders and executives. So so I guess it's really recognizing who is the right person for the right client at that time. And so when I think about it more as performance, I'm not coaching people on their business per se. I'm coaching them, the individual, the business leader or the executive, who is going through some challenges themselves, and actually going a little bit deeper and being a bit more introspective and being a bit more aware of their own process will be a really, really useful way for them to move forward in those challenges that they're finding, rather than going on into their business and talking about sales or marketing or leadership, or sort of it's a little bit more going deeper into that individual's experience.
I think it's bringing light onto the person itself, rather than they're projected outward. They come to you with, they've got external projections on what they want, money, career, and so on. But to get to that, they need to do a lot of work on themselves to get to that in the right way.
And I think I mean, lots of coaches have the same adage, don't they? Most of our clients have gotten to where, most of our successful clients have gotten to where they've got, using a certain amount of skills and mindset and strategy and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of their next success is going to be unlearning a lot of that stuff. So if you've got this level of success where you've done 60 hours a week for all the way through your 20s and 30s, and you're finding in your 40s you can't do that. You've got to relearn how to deal with those working hours. If you've driven through by obliterating everything in your path, maybe that's not going to be healthy moving forward. If you manage by sort of by carrot and stick, maybe that hasn't been the best way to be a leader, and so all of those things give us a level of success, but actually what's going to take us to the next level of success probably isn't going to be what's got you there in the first place. And so that's why that inner work is important from my perspective.
Yeah, definitely. As we're coming to the end, if we want to go a little bit deeper into this topic, I suppose are there any books, podcasts, any videos, any things that you would recommend?
Yeah, so definitely. I mean, if you want to go, there's lots of different areas to go into. I mean, obviously, from this, I would say there's sort of several different areas. Let's split it down to 3 brains, right? So I'll give you three separate ways of looking into this. So from the survival brain perspective, this is all about the neuroscience of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, fight, flight, freeze responses, embodied awareness. So embodied. How does the mind and body store trauma? Our undigested life experiences, all that sort of trauma work. So around Bessel van der Kolk, or around there's so many different authors in that field. Peter Levine, there's masses of them. So that sort of trauma and mind and body stuff is really that survival brain stuff. Then obviously emotional intelligence for the feeling brain is an easy way to go, looking at values, looking at that emotional intelligence piece, looking at things like gratitude, all of the stuff that heart coherence, Heart Math Institute, all of those sort of really interesting areas. And then obviously from the thinking brain perspective, there's how peak performance stuff around the science of peak performance. How do we mental fitness? How do we deal with difficult thoughts and feelings, mindfulness, and all of those bits and pieces. So there's so many different strands to it. But I'm very happy if someone wants to drop me an email. I'm very happy to recommend. More bits.
That was my next question. How can we get hold of you? I mean, have you got a website?
I mean,
you've got
either LinkedIn is the obvious place. So Andre Duquemin on LinkedIn. You can see my name on my Zoom link, or Andre@3braintraining.com. By all means, send me an email. It'd be great. And it's very nice. Thank you so much for asking me to be part of this, because it's been really lovely to speak to everyone.
So do reach out to Andre, at least as a connection, as a LinkedIn connection. If not, if you want to go deeper, you can, obviously. Andre, thank you. We're coming to the end, so I want to say thank you. Thank you, Martin, Matthew, David, Lily, Rob, and Michael as well, who was here, but he dropped off for whatever reason. Next week, we've got Jody Orgill Brown coming to us. Jody Orgill Brown.
One name for each brain.
Jody Orgill Brown. Anyway, we're going to be talking about anti-fragility. Anti-fragility resilience. This woman has been through a lot. And so she's going to talk to us about resilience, fragility, and many other things. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. Let's see where it takes us, because we also need to be a little bit resilient with everything happening around us. And there are people in situations that we can't even imagine. And so I'm sure we'll get a chance to actually listen to her journey and her insights and take something away. So that's next week. So that's next Tuesday. I got the times wrong a bit today with the UTC, because everything was changing and so on. The UTC is 4 to 5 p.m. UTC, which is 5 to 6 Central European time. You guys are perfect because you came here on time, but I'm sure other people saw that and either they came before or they just dropped off or whatever. But next week is going to be like, if you're looking at the UTC, it's 4 to 5 p.m.
The clocks went back on Sunday morning. And I think it's normally 3 to 4 Irish time. But I think because the clocks went back, it actually aligned up with UTC.
What's the time where you are now, Matthew?
It's actually coming up to 5 o'clock now.
Okay, because here it's coming up to 6 o'clock in Italy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're 1 hour ahead of you. Anyway, listen, thank you all. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Andre.
My pleasure. Really nice to meet you all. and
Hopefully
have
we'll
a
see you
lovely
again.
evening.
Our paths will cross somewhere, and I'll see you guys next week.
Good luck.
Thank you
Thank
again.
you, Gary.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.
Guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.